New Left in the 1960s. I think we can clearly see the ideology of individualism was New Left 1960s. And it was initiated, I would argue, by the state's nationalisation of society in 1945. Now, lest one hesitate over this and think, surely not, I say surely yes. Because if you actually look at philosophical history, the first real thinkers of individualism were those who lie behind the French Revolution. Rousseau, for whom society was always something that chained the individual. And also those behind centralised technocratic managerialism, which is the curse of the of our society, John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham. We already have, between these two figures, what I would argue is the current settlement. The revolutionary anarchy of self-interest and its central suppression under the auspices of the utilitarian surveillance state. For it was the progressive left that has always dreamed of centralised control. And it was the progressive left that encouraged the private libertarianism so that we could have our current public authoritarianism. So that's the claim. And I don't even think it's there for all necessity. There are other left-wing traditions, there are other settlements. I'm not being ideological. I simply think it's true. But this is the settlement that's ascendant. Everyone on the left is a cultural libertarian, and many of those on the right have been an economic libertarian. And both have sunk the ship of state. They've produced a world of rootless individuals and powerful state agencies, where the lack of control, the entropy that's created, particularly at the bottom, has led to the creation of ever more powerful state agencies. Against it all, against this whole sorry state of affairs, I want to propose a new civic renaissance, a new settlement based on civic society itself. And this, I think, is truly conservative. This has been a permanent feature of conservative thinking, the restoration of non-state association. Not only do I believe in little platoons, but little platoons have failed many a tyranny, and long may they do so. I believe in a political economy of little platoons. I believe in a new state of little platoons. I believe in a new way of associating civic non-state groups as the basis of public services, private services, and of course the civic middle itself. Now this isn't some kitsch fantasy about a new medievalism. Remember, you're not allowed to speak about history in England. We must be always modern. Change, change, change. I think Rory Bremner finished that one. New technology actually is what enables this new radical localism to take shape. It enables both global networks and that enables us actually to engage and inform the locality in ways we've never done before. This matrix is the future for a balanced economy and a social society. But to create these groups and foster these associations, we need a new economic and a new social model. Now for me, and this is where I get many of my critics, and I welcome critics, to be refuted, as Socrates said, is a form of purification. It just hasn't happened yet. The point is that many of those who advocate for free markets, and I am a free market thinker, I believe in markets, I believe in free markets, many of those who advocate for free markets have produced competition without competitors. They've produced essentially a state and an economy of vested interests. And of course, I'm not against big business. We need big business. The last thing we want is a localised nuclear industry or localised aircraft or missile production. It doesn't lead to social stability. But nonetheless, what we've actually done is we've produced a monopoly of capital itself. Capital and capitalism, the kind of capitalism I believe in, is the type that Hayek talks about. What's that? What should conservatives and how should conservatives approach the market? We believe, in my view, or should believe, in a society of widely distributed property, multiple centres of innovation, multiple sources of capital, multiple sites where people can change their lives, the situation of their communities. The last thing we believe in is centralisation of capital. What has our society been? What has our model of the free market produced? Massive centralisation of capital. Why do we have no local economies? Because local economies don't pay, they don't produce a return on capital. So if we're going to decentralise political power, if we're going to decentralise social power, all of which I agree with, we need to also decentralise economic power. not in the name of the state, but in the name of producing a truly competitive market economy. What are the two great barriers to a competitive market economy? The barriers of regulation by the state that stop small and medium-sized enterprises from starting, from growing, and from... Essentially, why do we have one of the lowest rates of SMEs in the middle strata of our society in the OECD? Because everything works against it. Everything works against growth. Everything works against employment. Everything works against development. Everything works against R&D. You're priced out, priced out, priced out. And until we can create incentivizations to create the middle, the economic middle of our society, we're always going to be a society of small traders who can't grow and develop and produce a truly competitive economy. 3/4 of all British businesses are one-man bands. What does that tell you? Or one-woman bands, of course. That tells you that there's a massive entrepreneurial drive in our society, a massive wish to start, to innovate, to take control. And why do they never grow? Precisely because of barriers such as that. But there's also a market barrier. What is that market barrier? Lack of access to capital. Not only do the banks, which we own probably several times over, if we're really clear, refuse to lend to small and medium-sized enterprises. Why? Because their balance sheets are corroding. Why? Because they invest in American real estate. Why? Because American real estate is constantly corroding in value. Therefore, their balance sheets always have to be shored up. Therefore, they can't lend. Why do we not create a new economic model to foster local businesses, to foster small and medium-sized enterprises, to pool R&D, to create local venture capital funds, to create even local stock markets, to create for the big society, which I profoundly agree in, the big economy, in which everybody can join in? One of the main reasons, and this is a paper by Andrew Haldane, which is a brilliant paper, who's Executive Director of Financial Stability at the Bank of England, one of the main reasons is the state. The state has priced in speculative capital to such an extent that capital goes only to speculative rather than real investment. Let me give you an example. The state insures capitalism in terms of liquidity insurance, deposit insurance, and capital insurance. These offer a protection to whole different parts and edifices of the bank's capital structure. Now, since 1980, for almost a century, the ratio of UK's bank's balance sheets against national GDP was roughly 50%. So that's how much bank lended against the national capital, 50%. But from the early 1970s, this pattern changed dramatically. By the start of this century, bank balance sheets were more than 5 times annual UK GDP. In the space of a generation, the insurable interest of the state has risen tenfold. Why is that? Because the state insures risk out of exchange, capital is sucked in and centralised into the city. As such, it doesn't go out to localities to seed new entrepreneurs and new models of investment. If the capital can get a high return because the state essentially takes the risk, then it will do so. That's part of the reason we centralise capital itself. We need to remove those state guarantees so we can have centrifugal forces for capital, so investment once more returns to the real economy. There are many other things we need to do. We need to price in new models for businesses. Some of our great businesses, some of our great multinationals actually market make. They don't market dominate. They create other modes of access for other businesses to innovate with them and create partnerships. By so doing, those transnationals create resilience and innovation in their own industry spaces. They won't become the new IBM precisely because they're open to that sort of entrepreneurial innovation. As such, market making, which is intensive productivity gain, is what will price innovation back into our system. So my arguments for the idea on anti-big business, not at all. My arguments are that big business can behave differently to its own advantage and to ours, to create precisely the type of settlement that will challenge monopoly and challenge vested interest. We also need a new model of economy to price in externalities, to create new standards. Oh goodness, I thought I was loud enough.